Barack Obama made history as America's first black president, elected on a platform of hope and change. So how will the legacy of the 44th President of the United States be remembered? Here are 8 accomplishments and 8 disappointments from President Obama's 8 years in office. The economic recovery will undoubtedly be a hallmark of Obama's legacy, due in large part to timing. He took office in the midst of the Great Recession. Despite relatively sluggish growth and a shrinking workforce, the stock market has tripled. Americans have seen a record 75 consecutive months of job gains, and the U.S. unemployment rate is now at 4.7%, down from 10% in 2009. Another pillar of the president's legacy, the 2010 passage of his signature health law, the Affordable Care Act, commonly known as Obamacare. Roughly 20 million Americans gained insurance under the law, and more than 90% of Americans are now covered. However, Republicans blame the law for imposing crippling requirements and taxes, and they have vowed to repeal it under a Trump administration. A major victory applauded by both parties, U.S. forces capturing and killing al-Qaeda leader and 9/11 architect Osama Bin Laden in 2011. And in 2015, the president celebrated the landmark Supreme Court ruling that made same-sex marriage a nationwide right.
It is beautiful.
President Obama has also taken large measures to protect the environment.
In just 8 years, we've halved our dependence on foreign oil. We've doubled our renewable energy. We've led the world to an agreement that has the promise to save this planet.
However, that agreement to lower emissions, signed by nearly 200 countries, is now vulnerable with President-elect Trump taking over. Obama championed women's rights, signing the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act a week after taking office. He nominated 2 female Supreme Court justices and supported lifting the ban on women serving in combat roles. Speaking of combat, Obama also followed through on his promise to bring troops home, even though he was unsuccessful in ending America's wars in the Middle East. Obama says today there are just 15,000 troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, down from 180,000. And finally, toward the end of his presidency, Obama sought to build bridges with America's foes, brokering the Iran nuclear deal and restoring diplomatic ties with Cuba. But Obama's successor, Donald Trump, has threatened to reverse some of those deals. While President Obama was successful by many measures, he failed to follow through with other promises. Backing down from the red line over the use of chemical weapons in Syria's nearly 6-year-long civil war will forever stain the president's legacy. As Obama leaves office, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad remains in power. The Islamic State group continues to commit acts of terror, and the United States sits on the sidelines of international talks between Syria, Russia, Iran, and Turkey. The prison at Guantanamo Bay will also outlast President Obama's tenure, despite his 2009 executive order to close it. Though he has transferred about 200 detainees, Obama's plan to shutter the detention facility was ultimately blocked by Congress.
Stop separating families!
The Supreme Court blocked Obama's executive order on immigration, shutting down the president's plan to defer deportation and provide work authorization for millions of illegal immigrants. As president, Obama addressed the nation more than a dozen times following mass shootings, but he was never able to move the needle on gun control.
These kinds of tragedies have happened too often during the 8 years that I've been president.
Time and again, Congress rejected substantive change, and production of handguns more than doubled during Obama's tenure. Racial issues also plagued the president's time in office, from the riots in Ferguson, Missouri, to the massacre of black worshipers in Charleston, South Carolina.
After my election, there was talk of a post-racial America. And such a vision, however well-intended, was never realistic.
While the president presided over a long economic recovery, growth was slow and income inequality widened. While median household income remains lower than its pre-recession peak, the wealthiest Americans have earned more money than ever before. In 2010, President Obama set out to reset relations with Russia, but the relationship soon soured. The U.S. has been confronted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, intervention in Syria, and meddling in the U.S. election. And while it's impossible to know the impact of Russian interference, President Obama leaves office having lost precious Democratic ground in Washington. In 2017, Republicans will control the White House, both chambers of Congress, and governments in 25 states.
You know that constant change has been America's hallmark, that it's not something to fear, but something to embrace. Yes, we did. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you.